Hi everyone, welcome to a reading wrap up. I feel like I haven't done one of these in forever. May has been so long for me, and I read quite a few interesting books. I don't know how to start this. I feel like I haven't talked to the camera in a while. Yeah, I read some really great books. I read a lot of books. If you watched my previous video, I read a lot of books that were recommended directly by you guys who thought you knew what I would give 5 stars. So if you want a more in-depth review or kind of live reaction of some of these, I will link that video down below, but it's the most recent one that I posted. So lots of good ones, actually none that were bad. I didn't have a book that I didn't find some form of joy from, or some form of, I don't want to say entertainment because some of these are quite sad, but all of these were fine books. So I'm excited to talk to you about them. There's 16? Did I count that right? 16-ish. And I took notes on these books, so I actually remember how I felt about the books that I read in the beginning of this very long month. Before we dive in, really quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, which is Skillshare. I have 2 classes now on Skillshare. First of all, Skillshare, what is it? It's an online learning community, classes in so many different things. You could learn how to draw. I'm taking their life drawing courses, but like the rudimentary, just literally how to draw courses. I'm learning how to draw circles at the moment. I mean, they go from beginner knowledge to extremely advanced knowledge. So I'm tinkering in like the beginner of every little skill I've ever wanted to learn at the moment. But I have a couple classes on YouTube specifically, whether that is just simply how do you start, what do you need to know before you start vlogging. And then my newest class, which is more the kind of behind the scenes organizational structures in terms of my calendars and tracking my finances and things like that. So if you're at all interested, there will be a link down below. The first 500 people to click it will get a free trial, 1 month, of Skillshare. Highly recommend. Also be sure to check out their learning paths. They have kind of curated all of their different courses into a curriculum. They have so many courses in that, lots of things for either a creative professional or really anything you can think of. So I always highly recommend Skillshare. My classes will be linked down below, and then that special link for the first 500 people getting a free month of Skillshare, all of that in the description box. Always love them. Thank you so much for supporting this channel, Skillshare. Let's dive in. I feel like this was a month of me, I guess, learning a lot. A lot of these books discussed racism and especially like intersectionalism, which was great. I feel like I didn't have conversations, but like with these books, I felt like I was eavesdropping on conversations that really taught me a lot. So that was a good theme for this May. Starting with Miss Major Speaks. This is, honestly, it read more like a long magazine article. It felt like more of a feature than necessarily a book. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in more of it's less intimidating. I'm not really one to read memoirs. It takes a lot for me to get into a memoir. And so this, I wasn't sure. I went into it not really knowing anything, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to stick it out just because it's not my genre of choice. But this really read just like a conversation back and forth. There's a really wonderful intro that I felt like was worth just reading the intro itself. And then it was literally just a transcript of a conversation. I believe it's technically multiple transcripts, but it just read like one long conversation, and it was excellent. It taught me so much. Again, I wasn't sure what it was necessarily going to be about. The full title of the book is Miss Major Speaks: Conversations with a Black Trans Revolutionary. And yeah, it follows Miss Major, who is a drag queen. She's an activist. Just like a really interesting character. And what I learned most about was really actually the police and prison systems, but also about like when we're trying to like uplift a part of a community, any kind of community, if we're trying to uplift them, are we actually listening to what they need? There are so many of like her drag daughters, for example, that are not in safe places. They can't afford rent. They can't afford medical supplies, things like that. Like, where are we putting our money? Where are we actually helping these people just like day to day? So I thought all of it was really, I underlined so much because it was just such an easy conversation between someone that she trusts. The ideas were so easy to understand and get across, and she was so funny, and the charisma just comes off the page. I highly recommend, if you weren't sure about it because you aren't really like a nonfic or a memoir kind of person, this one, again, it was just very simple, easy to read more like a long feature in a magazine, and I learned a lot, loved it. Miss Major speaks. Next up we have A Broken Blade. This is a quote-unquote booktok sensation. Did not hate this book. Did not love this book. So A Broken Blade, we follow our main character who... Oh my god, I can't tell you what's in this package yet. Okay, it's book related. You'll see it soon, probably on my Instagram. Anyway, so A Broken Blade. We follow our main girl who is the Blade. She is part of the kind of royal court, and she is like the head assassin. There's all these different, there's like the blade and the bow and the dagger, and everyone's title is like a weapon, which I found kind of interesting. And we are basically living in a world where there are different kinds of fae, and maybe some of the fae have disappeared. Whatever is going on in the world, she needs to get rid of this one kind of Robin Hood-esque figure called the Shadow. And she's been chasing this person forever, and she's like, finally gotta get him. Things happen. Things unravel. We learn some secrets about the world. I'm not explaining it well, but like very classic fae royal assassin storyline, okay? What I did like about this book is that our main character is not dumb. If anything, she knows more about the rules of the world than most of the characters do. I find that a lot of times we have these like main female characters that are introduced to a world where they are newbies and they don't really understand things. But our main character has been playing this game for a long time. She was raised in like an assassin training camp. She knows the lay of the land as much as she possibly can, because again, there's always secrets, there's always things that we don't know. But I feel like the characters, the kind of main cast, were all on a relatively level playing field in terms of like, do they know how the magic works, the world works, the blah blah blah, do they have the same level of skill, etc. I will say this was also like more violent than usual, and that's not a negative or a positive thing, it was just a little bit more realistic. A lot of times we have these kind of assassin characters that don't actually kill people, but she kills a lot of people, and she doesn't like to do it, but she does, and I felt like that at least was realistic. The sun is gone. There's like a massive cloud that just, I'm so sorry. In terms of my notes, I wrote that in the beginning I wasn't super engaged because it was a lot of like every sentence was, I opened the door, I saw the window, I went to the window, I looked out the window, I jumped out the window. It was very like, So that made it a little bit difficult to sink into, but then once the story started, I was along for the ride. Something about the story just didn't quite click for me. I think that was just a personal thing, but I'm considering continuing it because it's a series. I'm considering continuing it simply because I want to know if my hunch for the like the upcoming twist, because you can feel it, when you're just like something's gonna be revealed. I think I know what's gonna happen, and I kind of want to know if I'm right. So I'm willing to read the second book only because it's more of a personal pride thing. So I might continue it. It's not really high on my list. I wasn't drawn to really finishing the story other than just proving myself right. So that's A Broken Blade. Not great, not bad. You can give it a try. After that, I read Your Blood, My Bones. And I must make this very clear in the beginning that last month, I read The Whispering Dark by the same author. Loved it. The only reason I read The Whispering Dark was because I went to put Your Blood, My Bones on hold at the library, and there was a long wait, but I saw that The Whispering Dark was available, so I just picked it up on a whim. Thank God I did, because Your Blood, My Bones, without spoiling anything, near the end, the characters from The Whispering Dark come in and are major players. That's one thing that I didn't really love about this world is like, it's not a spoiler, and I don't know why it wasn't made clearer in the beginning, but this takes place in a world where kind of the veil between life and death is blurry. It's able to be crossed. It is known that people can jump between the veil. But as I was reading it, before I got to the end where I realized that the universe was the same as the Whispering Dark, it just felt like, okay, we're on like this random ass farm in our current world. And why is no one weirded out that supernatural things are happening? It would have been cool if we had known that like relatively supernatural things occur on the regular in this world, instead of it being like, why are these characters so not weirded out by the fact that that man just turned into a crow and flew away? Like, it just felt the world felt very strange. Let's just say that, because it wasn't made clear. But anyway, Your Blood, My Bones takes place on a farm, where we essentially have this girl who has returned to her family home to burn it down. We know that she has dark memories of this place. We don't really know why. And as she's about to burn it down, she's like walking around, just checking the house, she hears something in the basement. And when she goes into the basement, it is one of her childhood friends chained up in the basement. And how is he still alive? Because no one has been to this house for years. So we start to unravel a mystery. It's a lot of back and forth between like her childhood, the summers where she and then two of her guy friends grew up. It's very clear that there's some kind of weird like culty Illuminati looking thing happening with the parents that they don't really ever interact with as children, but they just kind of know peripherally weird shit goes down. And as we start to unravel it, it just becomes more and more supernatural. Overall, I enjoyed the ambiance of it. It was very like creepy summer, this kind of abandoned house, lots of like vines and a forest that's creeping ever closer. Overall, the atmosphere was really interesting, but I just felt like the world was not built in a way that... In my notes, I wrote down that it was very slow and I got kind of bored because essentially what's happening is we need to wait for this particular moon, a blood moon. It's like a full moon at this certain time. So a lot of the book is just like waiting for that celestial event. So nothing really happens. It's sort of like the characters are just sitting around and then events randomly happen to them. Time also passes very bizarrely. So we'll have a scene where we're doing this on a Monday and then the next paragraph is 3 days later, but it's not made very clear that it's 3 days later. And like these characters haven't interacted in the past 3 days. It kind of added to that surreal, slow, sticky summer feeling, but at the same time, it made it a little bit confusing. Also, the pacing changes very quickly. So once we get this new influx of characters, we basically have 2.5 characters for the majority of the book. And then at the maybe 75% mark, we get this influx where I think we have like 5 or 6 new characters and the pace changes to become quite quick. It just felt overall just a little bizarre. I enjoyed it because of that ambiance, but plot-wise, I was a little confused. I think I liked The Whispering Dark more. And I was surprised that, again, like I said, that she didn't let us know that it was within the same universe. I think that would have helped a lot. I also think a lot of people are reading Your Blood, My Bones without having read The Whispering Dark yet. And so it spoils The Whispering Dark. And it's just interesting that she chose to do it that way. I don't know. I would say if you're looking for a kind of creepy gothic summer read, this absolutely does the job and you should give it a try, but just settle in for a slow read for sure. Your Blood, My Bones. After that, I started my You Guys Think You Know What I Would Rate 5 Stars experiment, and the first book I read in that was a good one. I wouldn't say it's 5 stars, but it was absolutely a great beachy read, and this is Summer of Salt. I thought this was going to veer much more rom-com than it did, for sure. We follow a girl who lives on this teeny tiny island called By the Sea. It's just this little town of like 100 people, and her sister are about to turn 18 and they're going to graduate and go off into the world, go to college. And so this is really their last summer here. Their family is essentially a long line of witches, but nobody talks about it. They're sort of like, oh yeah, that family, they're a little odd, but nobody like outwardly accuses them of witchcraft, because their powers are mostly bizarre and harmless. There's no rhyme or reason for their powers. Some of their relatives can make, like, I don't know, books turn into papayas. Like they're really random. And that kind of added this really whimsical element to the story. The magic was very silly and light and easy to understand because there wasn't anything to understand. It was just so random and fun. And we follow our main girl who is struggling with the fact that her magic has not shown itself. And the magic needs to manifest before they turn 18. Her twin sister is fine. She can like fly or like float or whatever. But so she's kind of freaking out because she hasn't shown any magic. And she's leaving home, which is something that she's uncomfortable with and she's never done before. But during the summer, her hometown gets really busy because they have this magical bird thing, creature that appears every summer. And so all of these bird watching fanatics flock to the island, and that's the entire economy of their town is the tourist season just to come watch this bird. What happens when that bird goes missing? What happens when our main character develops a big old crush on one of the girls who comes to help her brother bird watch? Again, what happens when her powers don't manifest? A lot of things are happening in this one summer. I will say again, I thought it was going to be more rom-com-y or at least more romance heavy. It really isn't. It's much more about sisterhood. And I will say none of the plot points actually go that deep. Like, it's not a there's romance, but we don't really go that deep into it. There's the mystery of the missing bird, and technically we are trying to figure out what happened, but it didn't feel like a mystery or like a sleuthing kind of plot. There is this kind of coming of age feeling to it, but it also didn't feel very coming of age. It was just kind of, it hit a lot of things, but not deeply, which is why I say it's much more of a beach read. It was just easy, whimsical, fun to read. However, check the trigger warnings if you need to, because the ending actually takes a sharp turn into dark themes. So check that out. But overall, I just felt like it was a great light book to read by the pool. I read it in one day. Very easy. That is Summer of Salt. Next up, physical book. Are you sick of hearing about this? This is 5 Broken Blades. No, I don't have the special edition version that all of you guys are tagging me in. I'm upset about it. Yes, I know. So 5 Broken Blades. This was such a fun time. I have said it's like Adult Six of Crows. I still kind of stand by that. I will say, yes, I hear you. The writing is not as good. It almost reads, it doesn't read younger, but it's much more simplistic. Ooh, did you hear that? Ooh, love that sound. It's much more simplistic. You're not going to be reading this for Leigh Bardugo's lyrical, beautiful writing, okay? It's just a good time. It's fast paced. It has a bunch of POVs that I felt like kept everything quite fresh. 5 Broken Blades. We follow 6 different POVs, various people with dangerous talents, such as being able to drink poison, or being an assassin, or being a spy, or being a deposed, exiled, should-be-dead prince, things like that. And they're all getting together to try and kill the king. Easy, right? However, none of them trust each other. Everyone has a knife at each other's throat the entire book, which makes things get a little bit messy. I will say the first POV, what's his name? Starts with an R. I do not quite enjoy Royo, who is the first POV. The writing in his chapters is a little bit difficult, and the characters are not perfect. The characters, some of them are very much not likable. For some reason, people really hate this one character that I think is so fun. I mean, she's like annoying, but she's supposed to be annoying. Eri. Yeah, people really don't like Eri. She's supposed to be annoying. Okay, that's her shtick. I like her, okay? Justice for Ari. I just really thought it was a fun time. And again, the POVs are really short. They're all really quick. So you're kind of constantly being pulled into the action. It's easy to read. If you need something to pull you out of a reading slump, I highly recommend it. I'm not saying it's as good as Six of Crows. I'm not saying this is the next Six of Crows. It is just fun. Okay, I want fun, and this was it. It was good. And she already has the second book titled, ready for pre-order, coming out early 2025. Thank you, Mai. Thank you. Ooh, okay. After that, I read Victim. This was a really quick read. We are following our main character, who is Puerto Rican, born and raised in the Bronx. When his father dies, he learns that he can kind of use that victimhood to get certain things. Even though his dad was kind of like this deadbeat, not really in his life dad, he realizes he can just like ask to go to the nurse so that he can cry over his dad anytime he wants to, or like he can get out of certain homework activities and things like that because he's a victim of losing his father. And then that just kind of continues throughout his life as he realizes that he can kind of play up certain parts of who he is that maybe it doesn't affect him that much, but he can use it to his advantage. And it's not necessarily just him thinking of this himself, like, oh, I can use my kind of victimhood to move myself forward in the world. He's also prompted by people like his guidance counselor, who's like, you can get into a really good school if you write a good essay. You need to write an essay about how horrible your life is. And his guidance counselor keeps pushing him to like, no, but weren't you like so scared growing up in the Bronx? And so he has to kind of play this up. It ends up going so far as to him working in journalism. He ends up kind of profiting off of these stories of violence and suffering against people of color, pain that he doesn't necessarily suffer, but he can use for himself. I thought that explaining of the entire system, because he's not the only one. You have the white editors of the paper pushing him to talk about this thing, really hype it up that like, you know, this like hate crime happened and things like that because of how much people want to read about it and how much buzz it gets the newspaper. He also has a girlfriend who is Latina, but she's from like a very rich family, so it also talks about class, not just race, and how she wants to be a community organizer and to really help uplift the community, but she doesn't want to move to the Bronx because it's not safe and she doesn't like it there. She wants to move to this like yuppie rich section of Brooklyn. It really just kind of looks at this problem from every angle in a really readable way. I thought that the voice was really engaging. So that is Victim. After that, I read Library of the Unwritten, and my notes, I literally just wrote, great. So, Library of the Unwritten, this is for book lovers, for writers. This was a good time. It is about a library in hell where all of the unfinished stories, so if you have ever started to write a book and you've never touched it, you didn't finish it, you didn't publish it, it's living in hell right now. And the librarians of this library have to make sure that the books stay as they are. Like a book wants to be written, right? A story wants to be told. So sometimes the books kind of go haywire and they break out of their covers and like a character of the book will come out and try and escape the library. So that's basically their job, is tracking down these rogue story characters, which is fun in and of itself. But then the story takes a turn where we have to track down a specific book that the angels really want, but technically this falls under the jurisdiction of the demons. So now it's like a battle between the angels and the demons of who's going to find this book first. We have to travel through all the different afterlives, like Valhalla, this very strange like Egyptian kind of afterlife. It was just a really good time, but I will say, and I said this, I talk about it more in my review in my other video, but I think that the ending wasn't my favorite because it was much more action-based versus I just really liked the characters talking to each other and like having this great banter. So once it turned into like very dramatic action scenes, I was sort of like, oh, I really liked it when you guys were just like running around chatting, you know? So I will say that the ending was not my favorite. It is a series as well, so you could continue it. I just really loved the characters, and I love reading about books. Books about books, books about writing. It was just a really fun time. I might continue it someday. I think that the concept was really cool, but yeah, it was one of those things where I liked the characters more than the plot. And so once we had to focus on the plot, I was kind of over it. But still a good time. Highly recommend Library of the Unwritten. Next up, another physical. This was given to me by my friend Nathan, who I will link down below, who has wonderful, wonderful book reviews. This is a book called After Tonight, Everything Will Be Different. Also, it's a brand new book, but the way that it's printed, look at like the stain. It looks like it's been opened a lot and things like that. It's just the way that it's printed, and I love that. So it's a collection of, I wouldn't say short stories because it does flow into one narrative and one story, but it kind of reads like these little vignettes that make up a bigger picture. We're basically just following a young man who's grown up in various parts of San Diego, and sometimes Mexico, through his life, and it's told kind of surrounding food. Like each story is about like canned ravioli, burritos, various, winner's chili, chorizo burrito, etc. It's all kind of wrapped around food, but really it's about all of the different people in his life. It goes into some pretty dark themes like suicide, drug abuse, etc. But I don't know why, I just really loved this. I also loved it being in the backdrop of San Diego, so much of it just felt very familiar. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Kind of the complications of life, just how shitty life can be, but also if you keep people in your life that make it slightly less shitty, you should keep them and you should treasure them. So that is After Tonight, Everything Will Be Different. Next up is a book that I didn't finish, and I am sad about it. It's not because this was a horrible book. It's because this book was really good, but it just wasn't the right time for me. And that book is Open Water. This was recommended by so many of you guys. I read a solid 60% of this book, so I did get a lot out of it, but I just wasn't drawn to finish it. We follow two characters that love each other, but for various reasons never end up pursuing this relationship, or they just kind of circle around each other for a very long time. And that's part of the reason why I didn't want to continue, is just I'm not ever a fan of reading about situationships. I don't often read like contemporary fiction. If I want to read something, I normally read fantasy, right? And so this being like a contemporary situationship kind of story, I wasn't super drawn in. I will say I loved the beginning, how first bits of the relationship are talked about. The writing and just the description of that feeling of meeting a new person was described so beautifully, and I talk about it a bit more in my other video. It also uses the you POV as that second person. You see her from across the bar and you walk up to her and you say hello. So I don't typically like reading in that POV. So that also kind of took me out of it. It's not just the situationship. It also talks about these characters bond over being Black young people in London. There's also a lot of references to visiting his family and like family being all across the globe and losing family members that you can't physically say goodbye to and things like that. So there's a lot in it. It was just one of those things where I enjoyed the first 60%. And then when it came to me trying to pick up the book to finish it, my mind just kept going elsewhere. I kept thinking about the next book I was going to read. So I do recommend that you try it, but it just kind of wasn't concentration level wise and just general points of the plot. Wasn't the right time for me, but that is Open Water. Next up, I read Monsters Born and Made. This was recommended by a friend of mine, and I was really interested in it because it is inspired by South Asian folklore, which I definitely read a lot of East Asian inspired stories, but in terms of South Asian fantasies, not so much. So I was very excited, and this one let me down for various reasons. I think that it just needed a little bit more work before it was published. This is compared to a kind of the Hunger Games feeling, only because I think that there's the story surrounds kind of these trials, or in this book's case, races. So instead of the Hunger Games, it's the glory races. But for the glory races, you volunteer, and like there is a real glory to winning. And so actually our main girl being in the glory race is seen as a bad thing. People don't want her there because she's a lower class. We follow our girl who is part of a family that is in charge of capturing and raising these Mari stags, essentially like seahorses, can be on land, and these are the things that they race in the glory races. She needs to help her sick sister, and she thinks that the only way she can get enough money or power to get her sister the help that she needs is to win the glory races. So in she goes. And this is pretty much a race to the death. So she knows she's signing up for, well, she knows what she's signing up for. Overall, I thought the ideas were all there. I thought that the writing was really beautiful in terms of this very strange kind of post-apocalyptic world where people can't really go outside. They actually live underground for most of the time. Like, just visually, I got it. I saw the world very much. But the pacing was just very odd. Like, certain things that I felt like should have taken a lot more time, such as the races, the thing around which our plot is circling. The races had like, I think there's 3 or 4 races that they need to compete in. And the first one was literally over in a paragraph. It was like, on your marks, get set, go. Oh my gosh, somebody fell down. Oh, she won. I don't think she won, but like she finished, right? She survived the race. And then other things that I felt like did not need to be that long, such as certain conversations that were had, went on forever. So I just kind of wish that she had maybe either made it a little longer, because I think it's only 360 pages and it's potentially a standalone. The ending was kind of vague. I don't know if it will continue. It wasn't like an ambiguous ending that was like, oh, I hope that she continues. It was more like it ends there kind of feeling. So I don't know if it will continue, but just within that like 360 pages, I felt like if she had maybe added a couple more pages, she could have evened out the pacing, but it was just a weird reading experience. And it's annoying because the world that she built was very interesting. It just wasn't explained or like given the space to breathe that I think it needed to. So that was Monsters Born and Made. Next up, another one that you guys have been recommending to me for a while is A Feather So Black. This is a romantasy based off of Celtic folklore, and not bad, not good. I loved the setup because it was going to be messy from the get-go, which I appreciated. We follow our main girl who is a changeling. She has been left in the place of the kidnapped princess. The Fae took the princess and left a changeling in her place, right? And she has been kind of raised as the princess. Like, the queen just kind of took her in and was like, well, I guess you're my child now, and raised her, but always kind of felt like we're gonna rescue my real daughter at some point. So she's raised in the castle, whatever, and happens to fall in love with a prince, or like a high-ranking part of the royal sphere, okay? Falls in love with this guy who is actually engaged to her sister, right? Ruh-roh, okay? Love triangles abound. The changeling and the prince get sent off to go rescue the princess. It involves them crossing the boundary into the Fae realm and trying to break this curse, trying to break the princess out, and also maybe trying to bring the magic back to the human realm. Lots of things are going on. I think it got like quite tropey. The second certain characters were mentioned, you were like, okay, I know what's going to happen with you. I know what's going to happen with you. So I think that in terms of the writing, I really loved it. I loved the atmosphere. I felt like the Fae were described in a very traditionally Fae way. Like, they're very dark and made of twigs, and just the word choices were very delicious. I enjoyed the imagery. The plot was just kind of bleh. It also was very slow moving because this is another book that requires a full moon in order to have any action happen. So the book actually takes place over the course of almost an entire year, and they're just going back and forth to the Fae realm for like one night every full moon. The timing was just a little strange. But at the end of the day, it wasn't bad. I thought that a lot of the themes that were covered were quite interesting, but it wasn't necessarily gonna impact my life in any way. Will I continue it? Perhaps. I'm in no rush. That's not one that I'm like, I gotta get my hands on the second book, you know? But it wasn't bad. If you're looking for another Fae story, have at it. A Feather So Black. Next up, finally read it, Six Crimson Cranes and the sequel. It's a duology. It's a finished duology. We love Six Crimson Cranes and the Dragon's Promise. Loved, adored, loved. We follow a girl who has been cursed alongside her brothers. Her stepmother has cursed her brothers to turn into six crimson cranes, and our main girl is unable to speak, or else one by one her brothers will die. So she is banished off into God knows where, and she needs to figure out how to break this curse, save her brothers, all without speaking. This was just so fun. It felt very folklore, fairy tale-esque, because it was all linked to these stories of like the moon goddess and things like that. It had a very sweet romance. I will say the second book, I didn't love the beginning simply because it was just the way the story had to go. We had to do something to get us from point A to point B, and there were just like a couple moments of the plot that I was like, ugh, can we get this over with? So I will say like the first quarter of the second book wasn't my favorite, but overall I loved all the side characters. It made me so hungry. The descriptions of the food, she's a big foodie. So really appreciated that. It was just a really wonderful time. I highly recommend. There's like a animal familiar that's always with her. I cried quite a few times while reading this. Really loved. I can't say much more. I just want you to read it if you haven't already. And thank you for everyone who kept at me for this, because this came out in 2021, but I haven't read it until this year. Highly recommend Six Crimson Cranes. And the cover. I mean, so good. After that, I read probably the most buzzed about book I've seen this year, and that is Blood Over Brighthaven. This author also wrote The Sword of Kaigen, and that's been on my list for a long time, but something about it intimidates me, so I haven't read it yet. It's on my Kindle, but I haven't read it yet. But I read Blood Over Brighthaven first, and what did I think about it? This is a standalone fantasy, so big points for that, and how do I start? We follow our main character, who is a mage, and we follow her as she goes into her final test to qualify to be a high mage, which is someone who uses magic to help run the society. So basically the entire world there's this outside area, and then there's this giant dome that the city is in, Brighthaven, or Tallinn, I think it's called. And everything within that dome is run using magic, essentially. And so the high mages are the ones who come up with all of these different, they're the engineers, basically. So what I liked about this was that the magic system was really cool. It was essentially like programming. As she's talking about, you know, how she has to do this one test where she has to make a cauldron levitate. And so she's explaining how she's doing it, and it is exactly, she's just coding. She's a programmer. I thought that was so fun to read. And her main struggle is that she's the first ever woman allowed to this stage of magedom, of being a high mage. So a lot of the book is just her struggling with a lot of misogyny, trying to prove that she actually is the best, most qualified high mage, but she's a woman, so God forbid she touches anything lest she break it. But then the story takes quite a turn when we start to learn more about the magic system itself. So overall, before I get ahead of myself, I enjoyed this book, and I would recommend it to anyone who enjoys reading about really interesting magic systems. My complaint is that I saw the twist, and I'm not spoiling anything that there's a twist, because it says on the back of the book in the summary that she discovers a secret about the world, okay? That's all I'm saying. I saw the secret from miles away. I knew exactly what was going on quite early in the story. So then when there was the big reveal, I felt like that section moved really slowly, partially because I had already figured it out. So then as we're being told what's going on, I was like, I get it. Like, been there. So I felt like there was this middle part that was a little repetitive, a little heavy-handed. But if you're able to get through that, I would say like from the 60% point to the very end, I thought there were incredibly important conversations that we're having. Again, a little heavy-handed, but I think valuable to read if you're interested at all in white supremacy, systemic racism. I think it was really good to read, especially from the POV that the story was told from. And I think it was written at a reading level where I would say it's like an advanced young adult. There are like trigger warning, check the trigger warnings. There's a lot of dark stuff that happens, but overall, I felt like if you wanted, especially high school students, to read this, I think it could be right up their alley. So yeah, I liked it. My only complaint is just that I thought that the big reveal was quite obvious. And so that middle bit was just kind of felt like we could have shortened that a little bit. Like we got it. And just kind of dove into the aftermath of that knowledge a little bit quicker. But overall, highly recommend Blood Over Bright Haven. I will read Sword of Kaigen. I'm still scared of it. So not quite yet. Not quite yet. After that, I finally read Crane Among Wolves. It finally came out. I've been waiting for a while. I'm so excited to read all of this author's work. I've had a few of her books on my TBR, but now I am fast tracking them to the top. She writes Korean historical fiction. Korea has crazy stuff that went down in history. I mostly, because of like what I studied in school, I mostly know modern Korean history, let's say like the 1800s to present day. But before that, the drama, the crazy stuff that went down in like the Joseon period, wild stuff. Korean history is so interesting to me, but like, where do you start? You have literally hundreds, if not thousands of years to dig through. So this was just so fun to be told this story in this particular way. We are following a girl whose sister has been kidnapped by Yeosangung, who is King Yeosan, who was just crazy. He was this horrible king who kidnapped thousands upon thousands of women, stole land from everybody just for his like hunting fun times, killed people for fun. Like he was truly like a mentally ill monarch. We follow this girl as she tries to infiltrate the capital and get her sister out of there. So interesting, historically pretty accurate. The really cool thing about Korean history is that they were obsessed with taking records. They were obsessed with taking notes about anything. It's actually mentioned in the book, but they have these record keepers that they write everything down, and even the king can't stop them. For example, like I was talking to Kurt about this, like, was this really true? And Kurt was like, yeah, if there was ever a case of like the king was hunting and he fell off of his horse and he was embarrassed, and so he told the record keeper, like, you don't need to mention that. You don't need to say that I fell off my horse. The record keeper would literally write, the king fell off his horse. The king told me not to write this. And a lot of the records have survived. A lot of them were burnt by the Japanese, stolen by the Americans and the French, etc. But they still have a significant amount of them to read through, and it's just, they just wrote everything down. So it's wild. But anyway, I thought the story was interesting in that sense of the historical aspects. In terms of like the pacing and the plot, I can't really speak to it. I had kind of a personal life thing happen while I was reading this that made it really difficult to concentrate. It sucks that when you want, in times when you need a distraction more than anything, you can't concentrate on anything. So I thought like, I just need to get lost in a book, I need to take my mind off of this, and I couldn't. So the last half of it, I can't tell if it was my concentration issues that I just literally couldn't focus, but it kind of took me a while to get to the end. I think certain pacing bits of it were a little clunky, but overall, I really appreciated it for what it was, and I learned a lot about Korean history, and I was able to talk to Kurt about it, and he was like, yeah, that is actually right. Yeah. So yeah, I do definitely recommend A Crane Among Wolves. And then a book that I finished literally a couple hours ago, that is another book that I have just heard so many great things about. That is To Shape a Dragon's Breath. This was very good. I will say, not as much dragon as I thought there was going to be. We follow our main girl who lives in a place where there used to be dragons all the time, and for various reasons they have disappeared. But one day, our main girl finds a dragon egg. And in her community, they like leave the egg in kind of the center of town and just are constantly surrounding it, talking to it, dancing around it, just like it's part of the community. And then once the egg hatches, it will choose who it bonds with. And of course, it bonds with our main girl. Within the world that our main character lives in, she lives on an island that her people are indigenous to, but they are surrounded by this kind of fantasy version of Northern Europe. I believe that where it mainly takes place is meant to be England, but it's much more kind of Norse inspired. Everything in this fantasy world is like just slightly off. Like instead of Africa, it's Africa, you know? So somewhere vaguely in Europe, people have kind of made claim to their island. The indigenous people are still allowed to like live their lives, but they are taxed. And they are allegedly part of the kingdom, but only ever see the negative side effects of that, obviously. And in order to protect this new dragon that they have found, instead of being able to just raise it traditionally as they always have, our main girl realizes that because there haven't been dragons in so long, they've kind of lost that wisdom that her people have always had when it comes to raising dragons. So she doesn't know how to raise it, how to control it. So her brother decides that it's best for her to go to this kind of England place, to go to this dragon boarding school, because also not only to learn how to control her dragon, but so that the colonizers, let's just call them, don't swoop in and kill her dragon and punish her for not like properly reporting that she had like not adding her dragon to the registry, right? So they're like, listen, we just got to play by these rules. Let's dot our I's, cross our T's. Why don't you go to this school for all of these reasons? And so we follow her as she experiences living in this very different society. All she wants to do is learn how to raise her dragon in the best way possible, but she has to play by all these weird society rules. She starts getting death threats. I mean, it's a lot. So I will say the letdown side was that there was significantly less dragon than I thought there would be. Sometimes I even forgot that she had a dragon with her at all times, because her dragon's quite little, so it like kind of follows her around like a cat. Or I suppose like a dog. But I thought the commentary on society and just like how the colonizers view her as words such as uncivilized, savage, etc. They're all surprised that she's literate, even though she can speak a billion languages, kind of thing. I thought that all of that was laid out really well. And again, kind of like with Victim, or even with Blood Over Brighthaven, showing such a complex thing from all different angles. Yeah, I just thought writing wise, really engaging. I thought the school setting was really great. The magic was really interesting. It's kind of like an alchemy, like the dragons can almost perform alchemy with their breath. Just overall, really interesting. I will say that in terms of the plot, I just like wasn't sure what was going on. I kind of was expecting more of like a big crisis, like a bigger thing to happen, but this book was really just about her first year, or really first semester in this school, and having to deal with so many microaggressions and just like macroaggressions, if you will. I'm interested to continue the series, definitely, because I really love all of the characters. There's really interesting representation in terms of there are plenty of neurodivergent characters. There's talk about polyamory, etc. Like there was just, every character was so interesting in their own way, and I enjoyed it. I just was kind of reading it, waiting for, I think I'm just trained by a lot of these fantasy books to expect some huge thing to occur, and like we've got to rally the dragon troops and, you know, overthrow this. That doesn't happen, but I still enjoyed the book. Does that make sense? So don't go into it hoping for like lots of dragon riding. Her dragon kind of stays a little baby the whole time, but she's cute, so it's fine. But yeah, definitely recommend that as well, and that is To Shape a Dragon's Breath. So that is what I read this month. A pretty good reading month, if I do say so. If I do say so myself. Yeah, thank you so much vast majority of these were recommended directly by you guys, so thank you so much. I'm about to dive into making a video about a certain book series that I read in middle school. It was like a big thing when I was in middle school. If you can guess it, you get 1,000,000 points in my book. I don't think you will, but you can give it a try. So I am mentally preparing myself for that. So I don't know how next month's wrap up will be, but this was an okay one. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring this. Once again, that link will be down below. First 500 people to click it will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. My classes are linked down below as well. Thank you to those of you who have already taken it. And yeah, I will catch you guys in a bit. Hope you're all doing well. Yeah, summer reading list starts now. Let me know what you're reading. Let me know your thoughts on any of these books. And let me know what I should read next, right? Okay, see you later.